Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. It was a very busy day at Staples Center. The Lakers get their 8th win of the season, 114-106. Anthony Davis blows up for 34 points. Talen Horton-Tucker returns to the lineup, and the Lakers barely play any of their bigs. Plenty to talk about, plus the return of Alex Caruso to Staples Center. All of that next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We get this thing up for you bright and early. And, if you subscribe to the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel, you get the podcast generally, especially on, games when they play in the day or they don't play at all. We post that thing, try to get up a little early for you so you don't have to wait until the next day for this day's podcast. Sunday, Andy, it was a strange thing to see the Lakers finished with their game at halftime of the 1 p.m. kickoffs around the NFL. But they packed a lot into that game. From Anthony Davis to a very new starting lineup, to the return of THT, to news that LeBron James is very close to a return. All of that happening on Sunday afternoon. So where do you want to start? Just a dominant game first, if nothing else, from Anthony Davis. I mean, he was amazing.
Yeah, he really did a great job working inside. He really took advantage of the fact that San Antonio, with Jakob Poeltl out, they really have no size to speak of whatsoever. They're basically playing Devin Eubanks and Thad Young as really, really undersized centers.
Yeah, at least, Eubanks is at least tall. Thad Young is their best center.
Yeah,
but that's saying something. Thad Young is an undersized fella. So
sure, but
yeah.
Eubanks is 6'9". The bottom line is they don't have really any real centers at that point, and this was a good game for them to work a more committed, smaller lineup. Frank Vogel beyond going with AD at the 5 and starting THT in place of Kent Bazemore, who didn't play at all. He went with Melo at the 4, and this was something that Vogel said before the game. Like, once LeBron is back, Melo is going to go back to the bench. But he also said that the time had come to give this a look, which basically was him acknowledging none of the big lineups, or really even trying to have that best of both worlds that Vogel likes, with Melo coming off the bench and that shot of energy, like all that stuff. It's like at some point you got to stop screwing around a bit, and sometimes you have to fire all your bullets early. And that seemed like something Vogel was looking to do with this game.
Yeah, and it's there's the return of THT and the impact on the starting lineup and the choices that he made both in that lineup and on the bench were significant here. But I also thought you kind of mentioned it, like AD taking advantage of the size mismatches and knowing that there wasn't anybody there who was going to keep. I think he had 19 points in the first half, and like all but a couple. He had a couple threes. It was the first time he's had.
I was going to say his first time he's done it since either the playoffs. He had one game against Phoenix where he had multiple threes. Otherwise, you have to go back to May of last season in the regular season to have that take place. AD has not shot well from behind the arc at all. And
but other than those two, it was dunk after lob, and AD throwing himself balls off the backboard and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was sweet. He got stuck in the post with nowhere really to go, and had already picked up his dribble. So he basically said, screw it, threw the thing against the backboard Kobe style, and set himself up with a dunk.
And it was just good to see. He's been much better about it this year, I think. But the tendency, the fear, the worry is always in the back of everybody's mind. Like, oh, he's going to settle. He likes the mid-range game, because those 20-foot jumpers are very effective for him. But he did not screw around on Sunday. The Lakers consistently fed him. San Antonio had zero answer for LA's screen and roll game, which a lot of it went through THT. Which was interesting to see. Malik Monk had a couple really good moments on the screen. They just kept doing the things offensively that worked. And Davis, San Antonio, not a great team, 4-9 after Sunday's loss. But I still say, without LeBron James in the lineup and with all the guys that they're missing, every win is a good win. I don't care if it's against a good team or a bad team. 34 points from your superstar, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. That's the kind of game they needed. And meanwhile, Westbrook, a very controlled 14 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. He only took 11 shots. He turned the ball over 7 times. It's still an issue, but he wasn't overdoing it. I didn't think on Sunday. It was just, it was a nice game to just watch Davis not screw around and go be a superstar.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they really crapped the bed on Friday. One of the worst games in the LeBron AD era, period. And AD was mad after that game. Like Davis, there were guys who looked annoyed afterwards, like Westbrook did his whole "I'm ignoring you," while I check my text messages during the press conference bullshit. AD was outwardly pissed off, and he said multiple times, "This is unacceptable." Like what we did against Minnesota was absolutely.
If you missed the game, it was the Lakers have been bad in third quarters all season long. They didn't actually have that problem on Sunday, but they played a catastrophically bad third quarter against Minnesota and gave that game away.
And one thing that I will say that I really like about Anthony Davis, and this I think has been really consistent since he's been part of this team, for all of the times where, you'd alluded to it earlier, Brian, sometimes you get frustrated by that tendency to float on the perimeter, or you wonder whether or not he will always be as aggressive as you want from not just a superstar of his talent, but somebody who's supposed to be the bridge from whenever LeBron is done to, whatever comes after Anthony Davis. But he's clearly going to be that guy. One thing AD is really consistent about is when he's pissed off about the results of a game or pissed off about the way he played, he generally backs up the way he talks about being pissed off. Like he generally comes out and I think has a really good mindset.
We saw it in the playoffs, in the bubble playoffs. Like, he set a standard for himself and went out and did it. But I just think accountability in general is something that he's good with. He is not a star who deflects blame, who deflects criticism, who does all this stuff, and it doesn't always manifest itself in his play. But we talked before the season about how Anthony Davis could be just set up for a monster year, and that ultimately, statistically speaking, at least, he could be the most dominant of the big three. And, I know the Lakers have had a disappointing start. 8-6 through 14 games is not where most people would want them to be. The injuries have been a real problem. This has been the easier part of their schedule with, they still only play 3 road games, right?
I believe so.
Right. And so it's going to get harder from here, but you can't, the problem is not Anthony Davis. He has played very well overall through these 14 games. And I think, the level of accountability that he's given himself to try to carry the team to, going back to training camp, which I think you mentioned on Friday's show, he was like the only star who really seemed to take it seriously. And it shows. You can have a lot of criticisms of the Lakers, but I think anybody who's disappointed with what Davis has done to this point this year is probably not setting a fair standard for him.
Meantime, though, Talen Horton-Tucker, part of this starting lineup, brought on a lot of changes. Like I believe we mentioned Kent Bazemore did not play at all. And this was, for fans, and I would say even the Lakers themselves, looking for some type of injection of new talent, new skill set, new energy, and frankly, new hope in terms of, just, okay, can we finally just get this thing together consistently moving in the right direction? I thought THT, that presence.
17 points for THT on Sunday. As you pointed out on Twitter, that's 2 more than Kent Bazemore has in November. There are a ton of impacts from THT, from the way he played to the impact he had on the lineup to what it might mean for the lineup going forward. Let's talk about all of those things next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, NBA fanatics, have you heard about Prize Picks? Daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market, more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer all superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Everybody that deposits and uses the promo code NBA receives a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. That is a great deal. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under in their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you and those projected numbers. Plus, you can do mix sport entries like LeBron and whatever category you want, along with Lamar Jackson and whatever category you want. Awesome, awesome fun.
That's basketball and football for people, kind of.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Honestly, if you don't know who Lamar Jackson
really shouldn't
is,
be on Prize Picks. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, you should not be doing these mixed sport parlays. Like, I mean, that's a sucker's bet right there. I mean,
I don't know who Lamar Jackson is, but I like the look of that bet. I'm doing it.
Yeah, I mean, have all the parlay fun that you want, but I mean, like at least do enough research to know who you're betting on. That would be if I could offer you a little bit of gambling advice. Know who it is that you're placing the parlay bet on. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Prize Picks is always safe, offer fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com, use the promo code NBA, or go to the App Store today. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy.
Hey, Andy, does this sound familiar? This is the rhetorical part. Don't answer. You've got one device that lets you catch the game live. Another lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. You've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the good stuff. I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment that you love without the hassle. And it's a great way to finally get your TV together. Now, does this sound familiar? No,
yes.
Okay, good.
It does.
It's called DirecTV Stream, Andy, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports and movies and shows all in one place. No more juggling remotes. No need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract, so get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. Learn more about it at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. A compatible device is required, and content varies by package. Let's talk about THT first, just how he looked. Like, what did you think about the way he played? He came out, hit his first 3 and then missed the next 4. But he had 2 huge buckets for the Lakers in the fourth quarter when it looked like the offense was going to dry up. And man alive, that team looked a lot different with him on the floor than it has to this point.
There's a dynamic factor that he brings to this team that very few people on it can replicate. I mean, obviously LeBron, when he's back, can do it. Anthony Davis can do it. Russ, certain things Malik Monk can do. But when you start getting into guys, who have that combination of skill set and length and strength, like THT is a really strong guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're just that energy. Like, there's so much talk about how this is an older team. And THT is the youngest guy, period. I was going to say much less who matters, but then I realized it doesn't matter.
No, it's you're right. By any.
Well, I was thinking he's younger than Austin Reeves.
By a lot. It's not even close.
Just the difference in just energy. And again, the word that kept popping to mind while watching this game was just dynamic with THT. And just the thing, you and I were texting back and forth, Brian, and I said, like, in some respects, and obviously we're going to get into what happens when LeBron is back and, THT potentially staying in the starting lineup. Frank Vogel didn't commit to it. THT said the standard. Yeah, I know, really. I'm shocked that he's committed to the idea that, when LeBron comes back, he'll start. But like the THT can do certain things that like replicate a lower middle class LeBron. You know what I mean? Like in terms of being able to get to the rim. He doesn't do it as well with as much control, with as many options as LeBron, but he can do it. He can make plays off these drives. Again, doesn't do it as well as LeBron, but he can do it. When he gets to the rim at full steam, is it the same thing as LeBron at full steam? No, but it's
pretty
really
effective
good.
For a 20-year-old. He's an awfully effective finisher at the rim, which again we saw with 2 very difficult finishes in the fourth quarter.
His ability to twist while using his own body to shield himself is incredibly precocious.
It's what helps when you got 75-foot long arms.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do those things that don't seem. But but there's,
The
like you
point
said,
though I
there's
was
the
going to make
ball
really
handling.
quickly
Oh
is
yeah, go ahead.
just that he can do certain things that function as sort of like a lower middle class LeBron. The things that you're looking for from Kent Bazemore as sort of a jack of all trades, particularly without LeBron there, he's almost like a lower middle class THT.
Yeah, but
And
you know
and
what?
then there's the things
I'm
he
not
can't
sure, but
do
I
at
don't.
all.
I don't even know if jack of all trades is exactly what you're looking for Bazemore. I think you get into the worst tendencies of Bazemore when you try to allow him to be a jack of all trades. I think he's supposed to be good at two things: shooting 3-pointers and defending.
Okay.
And I don't. I mean, I agree with you that when you ask him to do all that other stuff, he looks like a very poor man's THT. But I think the difference between THT and Bazemore, I'm sorry, THT, I thought played a very solid game defensively. You could see him, the length, getting his hands on balls, took a couple
Yeah.
charges, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
He's someone who, when he's playing well, if he plays defense, and like every guy on this roster, it seems like, Andy, has this sort of caveat: if they do the two or three things that kind of and all at once, then that guy's going to play. The impact on the offense was, I thought, pretty profound. And the question becomes, when LeBron is there, are you better off with THT starting, or are you better off with him anchoring more of, being a bigger part of the second unit? Or, quite frankly, you can do both. You can have him start and stagger your lineups and make it so he still plays significant amounts of time. What I thought was fascinating, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, was sort of the downstream impacts that THT had. And, to, I think, another extent, Malik Monk, who played a strong game attacking the basket.
Monk's been in a good groove lately.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden, when you have two guys who are doing that, Wayne Ellington looks a whole lot more effective. And, it makes, so these little ecosystems that get built with all of these tiny lineup combinations and tweaks that Vogel can make, they're all their own little, like I said, like little ecosystems. And it's not even always going to be about which guy is objectively better than the other, but the way that one impacts another, which impacts another, and the way that Monk and THT and their ability to go downhill constantly, which was what happened on Sunday, and then Monk hitting a couple outside shots as well. That changes the calculus on somebody like Bazemore if those other guys are good enough defensively. It's a really fascinating set of choices that are being put in front of Vogel. And we haven't even mentioned Kendrick Nunn because he hasn't been out there yet.
Well, I mean, this team was ultimately, for all of the shooting that they brought in during the offseason, and that was something that they clearly went out of their way to look to address. Mm-hmm. This is still a team that they've said many, many times wants to get out in transition. They want to go downhill. They want to put pressure on the rim. And the more guys you have who can do that, and THT is absolutely one of those guys, the more the offense is going to work the way that it's actually supposed to. Like the more you allow Wayne Ellington to do nothing other than just slither around the arc looking for that open spot where someone's going to be able to find him, as opposed to occasionally,
which is super, by the way, low key, really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Just watch Wayne. I mean, it's a fun thing I recommend people do with basketball, especially if you're watching at home and you can DVR it and rewind it whenever. You're not going to miss anything. Take like 5 possessions in a row and either just watch LeBron, watch AD, just watch one guy go around and whatever. Low key fun in that thing is watching Wayne Ellington do his thing and find all the open spots on the floor. But I think it was either Kyle Goon or Jovan, Kyle Goon with the Southern California News Group, Jovan Buha at The Athletic, who pointed out that they set Ellington up. He hit 5 threes, I think, on Sunday.
He did.
4 of which, one of them was a corner, and 4 of which were in the same spot. The other 4 in that right quadrant, I think Kyle called. I think it was Kyle. Like that's all by design. That's like him figuring out how to get into that spot. I mean, it's all of this stuff. It's all interrelated, and they were able to find ways to get to the rim in the half court that had been better than they had been before. And THT makes a big difference. That skill set makes a big difference.
Here's the thing, though. The more guys you have that are actually capable of setting up those plays, the less you're actually going to ask somebody like Wayne Ellington to be a part of that, because there have
Or
been time.
Kent Bazemore.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Like,
Because you do not want him putting the ball on the floor.
or, I mean, exactly. You don't, or the less you have to keep Rajon Rondo on the floor with, some of the liabilities that come with having him out there. I think all things being equal over the course of the regular season, I think Rondo's been fine.
Yeah.
But with Rondo, though, there is that element of less is more. With Avery Bradley, there are going to be games, and Bradley only played 23 minutes in this one. There are going to be games where if he's not really matched up well for a particular assignment, his shot's always going to come and go. Like, he's never been a really consistent outside shooter. He's not a great playmaker. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, he's really more of
I'm
a
still
shooting
not,
guard. And point guard.
I'm still not convinced he's a great defender either.
Well,
I think Vogel likes him.
He does a couple things defensively very well. He is a very, very good pressure defender. He's good at a certain things, certain few skill sets, I mean, and obviously guys around the league have talked about, what Bradley does well. And, we've talked about this before, the difference between defensive numbers, eye test, finding something in the middle. But the point being, though, like, you become less dependent on keeping somebody like Bradley, who I think on most teams would be like a ninth man, as opposed to having at times in this season the importance of a fifth or sixth man. Mm-hmm. So, and that comes with not asking guys to do things really outside of their skill set. And, it's really beneficial having THT there, I think, just because it allows this team to become that much closer to operating in the way it envisions itself.
And it'll be, look, my position, your position, is like the Lakers can play more of their best players when they go small. I think there's no question. There are some downsides. San Antonio was, for a lot of the game, pretty good offensively. DeJounte Murray did what point guards do against the Lakers, which is destroy them. Another triple-double. He has 2 this year, both against the Lakers. And, they got some stops when they needed it. The Lakers did, but it was not an overwhelming defensive performance. They had a little bit of trouble on the boards, despite the fact that San Antonio was a very little bunch of folks. So, like, look, I mean, it's not perfect. But I do feel like the tea leaves, because Frank Vogel has said, I don't want to do the thing where I ping pong back around with lineups. I don't want to play the matchup game with my centers and all that kind of stuff. I do feel like the tea leaves are pointing towards something where they, with some exception against certain teams and certain players, end up going small more often than not. Dwight will typically play more, I think, than the 10 minutes. They'll have backup centers on the floor for more than 10 minutes in most games. But I think, to me at least, it seems like this is where
San Antonio doesn't really even have ass center right now, much
right, let alone 2. Right, it feels like this is sort of the direction that things are tilting, based on his previous comments about wanting some consistency. But we will have to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it many times. Frank Vogel has an inclination that I think is very hard for him to fight. I also think he has seen a lot that would make him come to Jesus, so to speak, in a basketball kind of way.
It was fun to see when you put this this thing together, and you get THT back in the lineup, and you have Monk playing the way he did on Sunday, and you can start to see, and there's still got a lot of guys to fit in.
Really quick,
people are going to get squeezed. And then we'll get to AC.
Yeah, people are going to get squeezed. Just wanted to clarify some stuff that Frank Vogel said with LeBron. It was interesting because THT had not actually had a full practice before coming back. He had done like a lot of 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and I got the sense that they basically just said, he's healthy. We're not going to get an opportunity to do this perfectly. Let's just get him in the game. Like, we really need him out there. The
Lakers can't practice. Like, they're not practicing on Monday. They won't practice on Tuesday because they played it back-to-back. When are they going to practice?
Yeah, we feel confident that he's healthy. We feel confident he's conditioned enough. We got to pull the ripcord at some point, which does allow for the possibility of LeBron returning without that full practice, which Frank Vogel actually said that he didn't know if it would necessarily be a requirement for LeBron to get that. And I'm sure a lot of this will be, LeBron saying, I'm ready. If LeBron says I'm ready, I
He's
imagine
ready, right?
right. But just so people know, when you take a look at the schedule and it's seeming really difficult for them to get in that full practice, the way Frank Vogel laid it out, he said LeBron is truly day to day, but he also made it sound like that wouldn't necessarily be a deterrent, which obviously is great news.
Right. I will he play Monday? I would maybe
I
not, but like,
don't
here's
think
the
he's
thing.
going to.
The biggest thing isn't whether he plays Monday or Wednesday or is it Thursday or Friday, whatever it is, as they start this road trip. It's that he, 1 to 2 weeks, 2 weeks
Wednesday,
ish.
Friday, Sunday.
Yeah. 2 weeks ish, which was sort of the original timeline. Looks like that's what it's going to be. And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So good news on that front for the Lakers. Very interesting return to Staples Center on Monday. The soaring eagle of freedom, that is Alex Caruso, returns. An exit that was controversial locally has gotten more so. We'll talk about it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. I love Thanksgiving. I love all the food that comes with it and the encouragement to eat all of said food that you want. But you got to do this smart, and you got to offset that decadence with something that makes sense, which makes it a perfect time for Built Bar, the new holiday dessert. You can eat it and actually feel good about it. Like, one slice of pie on average, 300 calories, and that's before you add all of the other stuff that everybody normally puts on it. Built Bar is
not a slice of pie for me, but go on.
Well, I mean, it's like a slice of, I don't know, rhubarb or some type of vegetable pie.
I'm going. Yeah, my pie is not that. Anyway,
okay, well, carry on. I mean, your pie is like 700, 800 calories, right. Whatever. Built Bars, though, only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar. They are low calorie, they're low carb, they're low fat, they're high protein, covered in 100% chocolate. You can share some at the family gatherings like Thanksgiving, make it less awkward if your family is like a lot of the ones out there. And you guys can bond over the impending Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday is going to be a huge event with a lot of surprises. I don't even know what they are, and I'm shilling for the company. So go to built.com. I'm excited to learn. Use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
So it was interesting that Caruso, to me, is coming back on Monday.
Right after THT made his return.
Right after THT comes back, and you start to see, okay, what it looks like with Malik Monk, and and Kent Bazemore can't get off the bench, and Wayne Ellington, played a bunch of minutes, and Kendrick Nunn's not back yet. So like, what happens when he comes back, and like, what about Austin Reeves, like who's earned some playing time, and there are a lot of the Lakers have too many dudes back there still. Like, it's not like it gets any easier, and Caruso wouldn't be a 35-minute a night guy. And even without him, like, the defense, we talked about it on Friday's show, Andy, third quarter against Minnesota notwithstanding, has steadily improved despite missing all of these players that they have. Like, the signs of total disaster that we had in the first week or two of the season defensively are coming around a little bit. So if you're a person who is on the side of Caruso isn't that big a loss, stop talking about him. It's not that big a deal. I guess there's something there for you. Meanwhile, if you are on the side of, they're going to miss it. And it's important that he's gone. Not insurmountable, but really important. You're watching how he's playing in Chicago, the impact he's having on that team and that defense, leading the league in steals per game, despite playing 25 minutes a night or something. There's something here for you too. There's a lot here for everyone, and even more so after he appeared on JJ Redick's podcast and made it very clear through blinking when asked by JJ Redick to go over under a number that the Lakers, while Rob Pelinka says they were aggressive in quote fingers trying to keep him, not everyone defines aggressive in the same way. The Lakers essentially lowballed AC to a number that they knew he wasn't going to take.
Well, JJ Redick threw out the number 2 years, 15 million, asked him to blink once if it was under, twice if it was over. And Alex Caruso did the most distinctive and purposeful one blink I have ever seen a man do in my life. He kept his lids shut for like a good 2 seconds just to make sure there was
Right.
absolutely no ambiguity about what that blink represented. And look, 2 years, 15 mil it's not just lowballing Caruso. That's making it clear we're really not that interested in re-signing you. It's similar to what the Lakers did when they were negotiating with Ty Lue, and they made him an offer for him to turn it down. And when you're doing something like that, honestly, I think in terms of optics, relationships, and frankly, just not either pissing off members of the team, in the case of Ty Lue, LeBron, or pissing off fans, you're better off just going in a different direction as opposed to, because this stuff always gets out, as opposed to making it clear, or making eventually coming out.
We were aggressive. We tried to keep him. No, you weren't.
No, I mean,
it's fine.
It's below market value in terms of years, in terms of dollars, and also in terms of what he meant to your organization as a key part of a championship run, but also to a guy that you actually fostered his development. Like he's especially after going through the period with the kids and then all the kids eventually getting traded, like literally everybody other than Kuzma and I guess Caruso getting traded to pave the way for AD, which obviously defensible, but like, you were down at that.
They already won that deal.
Right. But you were already at that point down to Kuzma, who had always felt like at some point was going to get moved.
If not when.
Caruso,
when, not if.
Right. Caruso and THT. And that's why I said earlier, I think it's really interesting that, and kind of apropos, that Caruso is coming back right on the heels of THT's return, because the organization allowed for the perception, if not just allowed for the reality, that it came down to a choice between Alex Caruso or Talen Horton-Tucker, purely finances, and they chose THT. Even if you can, and I think you certainly can, defend the basketball merits of THT, he certainly has more upside than
Alex. If you can only pick one, then there's a case to be made for choosing THT.
There is a case, but there's also a case to be made for Alex Caruso. And either way, they allowed themselves to be seen as, making ultimately a financial choice, one or the other between the two. And for a lot of reasons,
that's what they did. They did make a financial.
Sure. But for a lot of reasons, though, that's controversial. It
is. And the larger question becomes, how much is it going to matter? And I think this is truly one of those situations where multiple things can be true at once. Losing Alex Caruso is not going to bag it. They're not going to win a title. Obviously not. They can't have a good defense. Well, they certainly could. But there's no objective way to say that they are a better team for not bringing him back. And the question becomes, should, as a fan, certainly I don't think you care if it's not, the Lakers print money, but as we talk about, the owners aren't hedge fund people.
Right. They're not
their income. Rich. Right. Their income comes from the team. An extra $30 million matters to them. I think where the conversation becomes really interesting is going to be questions like, okay, what if they had kept Caruso and not spent their mid-level?
Right.
Spend $8 or $9 million on AC and mitigate that by not signing Kendrick Nunn. And you sign one extra minimum guy or something like that. There are multiple ways that this could have gone, and what we're learning with, like, they signed Kent Bazemore in a lot of reasons because I think they thought they could cheaply get what they what they were missing with AC on the defensive side. And that's not true. They're not getting it. But also too, it also becomes irrelevant if Bazemore can't stay on the floor, if he's played off the floor by other people. This is just one of those questions that's going to hang over the team with the turnover that they have and all this other stuff. And the other thing I think that is very underrated about this is one of the most common refrains with the Lakers is that, oh, don't worry about it. The team now isn't going to be what the team looks like after the deadline. Often they're talking about the buyout market, which may or may not have impactful people on it. I'm sure they'll sign someone. They always do. But oftentimes they're talking about trades. And if you're talking about trades, the Lakers have very little flexibility in who they can trade
In
and
part
what they
because
can
they
do.
didn't sign Alex Caruso.
Correct. Because they
Yeah.
don't have anybody. They have their superstars. They have THT making what he makes. They have Kendrick Nunn at about $5 million, and everybody else is on a minimum. And trying to improve your team, trading those salaries with those things available to you is really hard. So from a trade flexibility standpoint, they'd have been best off bringing THT back and Caruso back and using their mid-level, which by the way, which is the assumption that I made when they made the Westbrook trade. It's like, well, you have to bring back those guys.
Oh,
now.
I thought for sure they were.
Absolutely.
I was stunned that they did not bring back Caruso.
100%. I was completely stunned.
Particularly after the Westbrook deal. I was stunned.
And I mean, I just, the get over it crowd needs to understand, like, Caruso has a material impact on the defense that we saw in LA, that we're seeing in Chicago. And by the way, he's playing a lot more assertiveness over there offensively and doing some things that, quite frankly, he wasn't doing here. It is a fascinating, like, kind of case study in players who are not superstars, but are obviously and demonstrably important, and sort of how you have to run a team. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer in, like, concrete terms. I had kept him.
I think there's a righter answer than
right.
wrong.
The righter answer to me is you keep him. It's also one that pays less attention and is less sympathetic to their financial considerations than they obviously are.
No, I get that. And I've said before, like, the idea that the Lakers completely cheaped out during this offseason, I think, is inaccurate, just because once you start going
$40 million into the tax.
Right. I, as much as, it ain't my money, and I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to take up for this in a sympathetic way. I don't care if they spend in a way that's uncomfortable for them. Go do it. I don't give a shit. I prefer
they would, yeah.
No. My point is simply that, objectively speaking, I don't think that's accurate to say that 40-something million into the luxury tax is spending nothing. That's portraying them like, like a Phoenix Suns, or, like a team that is always
the Chicago Bulls. I was listening to Bontemps and Windhorst and McMenamin argue about it. The Chicago Bulls also print money in a gigantic market, and they won't even go into the tax.
Right. So, I mean, I want to point that out. That being said, though, one of the things that makes this, I think, butts up against, I think, the logic they'd throw out in terms of, offsetting Caruso's absence is, for the 80 billion guards that they signed this offseason, none of them really do what Caruso specialized in, or even come close to it. The other thing too, though, and again, there's a lot of time for this to play out, not just this season, but really over the course of however long he's with the Lakers. But that perception that I said earlier, where it's a choice between THT and Alex Caruso, it is very easy, potentially accurate, but if nothing else, very easy for Laker fans to look at this and think that at some point the tie was broken by THT being a clutch guy. And, it being clear, like, look, you want to re-sign them both, have at it. If you're only going to keep one, we would strongly prefer that Talen stay in Los Angeles. And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that that's what happened, because I don't know that's what happened. But if you were telling me that something along those lines did happen, I would not find it slightly unbelievable at all. And then finally, Caruso's thank you video. You think it'll be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, the entire halftime? Will the game be postponed?
It depends. Are we getting the director's cut? I mean, it will be fun to see
feature length.
Right. Regardless of the controversy or controversy, to use the British pronunciation. I love the way that the British will say controversy. They have many good pronunciations, aluminium being among them. The crowd is going to freak out for him, and rightly so. And he deserves it. He deserves his money. I'm glad that he ended up in on a team that is competitive,
He's a good dude. He
Chicago
busted
playing
his
way
ass to get
better.
here.
But Chicago playing way better than anybody expected and all that. Like, it's
They're
cool
kind
that
of
he's on a good
Lakers
team.
Midwest, between all the former Lakers, all the guys who've been linked to the Lakers recently, guys with LA ties, USC ties.
You're right.
They're kind of the team that you root for in the Eastern Conference if you're a Laker fan.
So it'll be fascinating to see the conversation around him going forward and whether or not, to what degree it matters that they let him go.
Look, they win a championship. None of this matters.
Nope, it doesn't. And I mean, it's a business, and the business and the basketball don't always work in concert with each other, even for a team like the Lakers, which looks a little bit different than they actually are when you lift up the hood. And that is an important thing. Yeah.
We've said this before we go. They used to, at times, make cost-cutting moves, even when Dr. Buss was in charge. So this is not a pure genie thing. This is not a pure, this is what the kids do. This has always happened.
Godspeed, Carving Station. So we will be back on Tuesday with a little the wrap up of Monday's game against Chicago, which is all of a sudden a very premium game. Thank you again for making us your first listen of every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will see everyone tomorrow.